Hey, YouTube, Facebook, people. Um, I tried to go live yesterday night on Facebook and it strung me along, but then I don't think it went live and it certainly didn't record as there's no file of it on Facebook. So I'm redoing a topic that I did last night, and the topic was church and state and how they are one and the same, even though we have this window dressing separation of church and state. It's not the truth of how our country works. And there are many things about the basics of how our country works that we're lied to about. For example, we think in a presidential election, to use a recent example, we think that it's a popular vote. It is not a popular vote. In the Constitution, it says um, the electors, okay, are the people who vote for president. You and I, Joe Schmo, um, our vote, we didn't always even used to have a vote. We certainly didn't always have a vote for senator. Those were appointed by governors. So, and that was the original checks and balances, which has been eroded by democracy ideology, um, which doesn't mean what we'd like to think it means, um, but it actually means mob rule, and it gives the media all kinds of power to where you have what we have today, which is Washington, D.C. being basically just Hollywood for ugly people, as they say. Um, I was surprised to find that nickname on Wikipedia. Uh, Washington, D.C.'s nicknames, Hollywood for ugly people. So that's what you have today in America. Not to mention all the voter fraud, we won't go into that. What I want to talk about is the religion, which is a Freemasonic religion. And all you have to do is look around in Washington, D.C., look at the back of your $1 bill, the most common piece of currency there is, and you'll see Egyptological, Hermetic, Freemasonic symbolism, which has got nothing to do with any of the things that are on paper about, an Athens Greek-based democratic form of government or a Plato-based republican form of government. All the images point you back um, to the pharaoh and to the Egyptian type of society, which interestingly is the most stable type of society, certainly not the freest by any measure, but the most stable. Archaeologists have seen that um, Egyptian hieroglyphics have retained the exact same technique, dimensions, and proportions over millennia. And so I think that's probably what secretly these founding fathers who were Freemasons, George Washington, obviously, who the Washington Monument is built after, was a outspoken, very enthusiastic Freemason. Uh, um, he was a bit not so sure about some of the newer things that were coming around during his time. Mesmerism was a trend. Also, the Bavarian Illuminati had made their way over here from southern Germany. However, Thomas Jefferson was a very enthusiastic supporter of the Illuminati, which kind of hearkened a less superstitious form of Freemasonry. The Freemasons, of course, started as the church builders and really essentially have built their own church over time. Um, but so essentially, the Illuminati are kind of like promised to be sort of Freemasons without all the hocus pocus and the superstitions. And they were suppressed in Bavaria shortly after their founding by the Elector of Bavaria, which elector doesn't mean the same thing there as it does here. Um, Basically, he was the Catholic ruler of Bavaria. Um, and he definitely alerted Europe to the workings of the Illuminati, how it would be a threat to their traditional forms of government. But in the United States, as it was at the time of its founding, a person as important as Thomas Jefferson, who wrote, I guess, as we're told, wrote the Declaration of Independence. Um, and it wasn't just about independence, of course. It was about a new form of government. Get rid of all the witch burnings was a top priority for the founding fathers because they had seen a generation earlier the Salem witch trials. They wanted to do away with the superstitions. And Thomas Jefferson clung very firmly to the ideal of religious freedom and separation of church and state. Um, and he also believed that the Illuminati would not be a secret society in America because there was no reason, as much later um, John F. Kennedy would say in his famous speech. Uh, he said, "The very idea of secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society." And Thomas Jefferson, it was just unimaginable to him because, of course, this was a kind of a new project. Um, but certainly there was that type of religion that sort of uh, unfortunately, the Illuminati did not completely eradicate the weirdness of Freemasons, and very unfortunately, too, they did not get rid of their own secrecy in America. Despite the fact that there's no open persecution of the Illuminati here, when there was all over Europe and probably many of the other colonies. So it's very strange. I don't know the details because, of course, it is a secret society. But uh, but anyway, whatever the case may be, um, we have a lot of Freemasonic symbolism in the United States of America to this day. It's too bad, in my view, that Jefferson did not have quite the coup de grace or total answer to this issue that he thought he had. I think his ideals, in many ways, were sound, um, and historically had a good historical perspective, as much as he could have had at that time. I would imagine, um, but it's a sad thing. Um, but anyways, be that as it may, we just don't have the type of freedom from religion or freedom of religion even that we thought we did because it's all under the Freemasonic religion. Um, and the Freemasons, as I said earlier, were the builders of the Catholic cathedrals and monasteries. And in the Reformation, they sort of broke away and founded their own Protestant denominations and things like that. They had a lot to do with that. Um, the publication of the Bible, of course, had a lot to do with that too. Publishers tended to be on the cutting edge. Of course, Jefferson's sort of mentor, Benjamin Franklin, was a publisher himself by trade and an inventor. So these were people who were seeing, a lot of change, and they were people who were part of a lot of change. They were people who were tireless and restless and eager to get away from witch burnings, especially, which, whatever people might think, were not a feature of the Dark Ages, since they only started, um, well after uh, the 1300s. I don't know exactly when they began in Southern Europe and then spread to Northern Europe, and then unfortunately in the Reformation grew even worse. And then, of course, stateside, we have the isolated incident, thank goodness, of the Salem witch burnings, um, which even those were thought to be a result of perhaps some sort of fungus growing in the corn crop, uh, rather than only religious zealotry and theocracy. But whatever the case was, and they didn't know this back then about about the hypothetical fungal cause of the hallucinations that caused perhaps the Salem witch burnings. But um, in any case, uh, these men were just ready for a clean slate and a fresh start. And even though they didn't get rid of state religion, as I see it, because the state exercises all types of hocus pocus, sorcery, witchcraft. That's what Freemasonry is in essence, and we can go into that a little more later. But they did get rid of witch burnings, thank goodness. But Freemasons are, I mean, there's the craft Freemasons, and they incorporated a lot of the Kabbalah, which is really the source of Western religion as well as witchcraft, both. Of course, that's why the religious hated the witches so much, not because they were so different, but because they actually were so alike and used the same book. In fact, the formal accusation against witches was one of heresy, because you couldn't just burn someone for doing something; you had to burn them for believing differently. Um, and that they had participated in what's called the Witches' Sabbath. So that's a dead giveaway that we're talking about something Hebrew, and in fact, it does indeed come from the Hebrew Kabbalah. Don't ask me to spell that. There's no right way, no wrong way. Some spelled with a Q, let's see, whatever. But so definitely, we don't know much about the Kabbalah today in the modern West because, of course, we're dumbed down, and I think that's sad. We were the most literate society in the world at one time, except maybe Poland. But but that doesn't mean educated, because all we had was the Bible and Fox's Book of Martyrs. Now, the Bible's okay. It's historical to some extent. Fox's Book of Martyrs also, but maybe only to the same extent. Um, and so what we had was zealotry in this country, more than education, as we would, as many modern people would think of it. And again, we can credit this to the Illuminati in some ways, that there's an alternative narrative that doesn't make religion out to be something better or more helpful than what it really is. But but yeah, I guess that kind of covers that topic. I just wanted to dispel that myth of the separation of church and state, because it's not true. Um, I'm gonna do another video, I guess, after this, because I got some people coming. But where I talk about how we're a society of actors. Um, so thanks for watching. I'd love to hear your comments. I hope I can go live very soon. Enjoy this. I hope it helps, and take care.